If state banquets are about impressing the guest, there are few better ways to do it than a state banquet. And tonight, the US President and First Lady were treated to one in the spectacular St George's Hall. Donald Trump said Windsor Castle was chosen as it's the ultimate venue. The truth is, Buckingham Palace is full of building work, but you can see why anyone would be impressed walking into this. Everything from the 50-metre-long table to the speech from the King is about saying, "You are welcome."
The ocean may still divide us, but in so many other ways we are now the closest of kin. Not only have you set foot on British soil twice in the last 2 months alone, but I understand that British soil makes for rather splendid golf courses.
The phrase special relationship is often used at times like this, but Mr Trump tonight took it further.
His Majesty spoke eloquently about the bond which inspired Sir Winston Churchill to coin the phrase special relationship, but seen from American eyes, the word special does not begin to do it justice.
The President's royal interaction began just after midday in a field, Marine One, landing deep inside the Windsor estate and well behind castle walls. Even for a king and queen who have seen many things, it was a moment they too wanted to witness for themselves. The welcome party was the future King and Queen, William and Kate. Donald Trump knows this state visit, his second one here, is history-making. No elected leader anywhere in the world has had that before. Then, as one head of state met another, the historic visit was underway. If there is one thing British royals can do better than any others, it must surely be this: a ride in a carriage pulled by horses with a king towards a castle. For a president who loves to be flattered and admired, he would have felt both those things at this particular moment. Behind them, Queen Camilla and the First Lady, followed by Prince William and Kate with the American ambassador. Usually carriage rides are about being seen, but for reasons of security and protesters, these carriages would not be seen by anyone outside the castle. The soldiers, sailors and airmen lining the private roads of the estate might have been asking themselves what on earth they were protecting the president from. The biggest threat looked to be a herd of Jersey cows in the field behind this sailor. Donald Trump has previously spoken about today being bigger and better than ever, and in the quadrangle the British obliged. So not just a guard of honour, but the largest guard of honour ever put on for a state visit. 1,300 military personnel took part. Whatever differences these two men have, don't mention oil drilling or climate change, they were today put to one side. Mr Trump calls the King my friend. He even pointed out a potential trip hazard. And this monarch knows at times like this, his job is to do what his government has asked and make the guest feel abundantly welcome. There was, of course, a time when Britain and America were at war, and deep in the royal archives they found writings from the monarch George III, the one we now call the last king of America.
That is so amazing. That is real. That's the real deal.
That's the real deal, the president said. You'd hope it was, having been carefully brought up from the royal collection. The reason why this 47th US president is impressed by and in awe of the British royal family is in large part because of his Scottish-born mother Mary. She hugely admired Queen Elizabeth, and today in the chapel where the late Queen rests, a private moment this afternoon at her tomb off camera when President and First Lady laid a wreath. As they looked around the Gothic chapel, work started here in the 1400s, it dawned on Mr Trump quite how old things are in here.
It's a lot of history.
When the military performs beating retreat, it signals a moment to close camp gates at the end of the day, although in Windsor today the gates have been firmly shut since dawn. For the Prime Minister watching the ceremony this evening, it must have been a case of so far so good. You might even call the events at Windsor today the smoke screen, because the political day, the difficult one, is coming tomorrow. But that can wait. For now, there is a 50-metre long table to admire and enough glasses to impress even the most well-heeled diner.
And Chris is here to talk about all this. Listen, I'm not going to lie, I found that steak banquet absolutely fascinating. You know, one of those moments where you really feel the royals do earn their money. You had the king on one side of the president, Kate, Princess of Wales, on the other. Over at the other side of the table, you've got the Queen and the Prince of Wales, the other side of Melania. You've got Tim Lawrence, of all people, sitting next to Trump's very hard-line Chief of Staff, Stephen Miller, and down the other end of the table you've got Rupert Murdoch. As far as I know, somebody no one around the table likes, next to the Downing Street Chief of Staff. What did you make of it all?
You almost listed everyone.
Well, I know, it's not quite everyone around the table.
Dinner
Sorry
there.
about that.
Look, I mean,
imagine the conversations though, right?
Look, I mean, they've got their brooms out tonight. They're sweeping up from under the, under the table. You can't accuse anyone of not laying it on thick enough today. Let's just get that point out there. The royals did what they do very well indeed. But look, you're right to say, what are you to make of Rupert Murdoch being there, given the royals have had their run-ins of Rupert Murdoch's newspapers in the past? In fact, Donald Trump is suing one of his publications in the United States over things they said about Jeffrey Epstein. So, of course, we want microphones on every person on that table. Of course,
if only.
We don't have that luxury. The thing I will say, Tom, is everybody was on their best behaviour today. Even Donald Trump stuck to the script largely in his speech, and he doesn't do that very often. Every speech I've ever heard the King make in recent times, particularly state banquets, he mentions climate change. It was toned down to, we must love Mother Nature tonight. So, nobody wanted anything to go wrong. Nobody wanted to put a foot wrong. And that included keeping it all inside the walls of the castle, because as a colleague said to me earlier, perhaps the Red Arrow's got the best view of events inside, certainly a better view than anyone on the street out here did.
OK, we'll get your final thoughts at the end of the programme, but for now, Chris, thank you very much indeed. Stephen Miller, of course, not the Chief of Staff, so sorry about that, but a key Trump aide nevertheless. Dan is over from Washington, travelling with the reporters closely following the president on this visit. Dan, I don't know what you thought. I mean, I think Chris and I both felt Donald Trump really didn't want to offend anyone in there. He was absolutely sticking to a script, not weaving, as we know he loves to do. What did you make of it all?
Absolutely, yeah. I've watched and listened to a lot of Donald Trump's speeches over the past couple of years, probably more than is healthy for anyone. And I can't remember many times when he has stuck so rigidly to the words that were printed in front of him tonight, not put on an auto cue. There was the odd attempt at a very minor weave, I would say, a little bit of ad-libbing, but largely he stuck to the script, and I think everyone in the room will probably be pretty relieved at that. There was the attempt at a couple of jokes. There was the warm words. He talked about it being the highest honour of his life. There were a couple of things that stood out. One, that he just couldn't resist a dig at his predecessor, President Biden, saying a year ago we had a very sick country, now we're the hottest in the world. And then there was this other line about Britain and America have done more than for humanity than any countries in all of history. I think a few people might wince at that, but look, overall a collective sigh of relief, I would imagine, from Keir Starmer's government. Tomorrow, as Chris mentioned, is the big political day, and there the jeopardy lies.
Dan, thank you very much. Well, as Dan was just saying, the business end of the visit is due to be tomorrow, when President Trump and Sir Keir Starmer talk trade. The UK has already got something out of it, billions in AI investment through what's been called the tech prosperity deal. But it isn't all one-way traffic. Britons are going the other way too. Billions, that is, are going the other way. Back in the studio, Joel has been going through the figures.
Yeah, President Trump flew in yesterday with a delegation that included some of the most successful people on the planet, including the heads of Microsoft, Google, Nvidia and OpenAI. £31 billion of investment has been pledged in Britain in the next 4 years to be invested in artificial intelligence and cutting-edge tech. The lion's share of that money, $22 billion, will come from Microsoft. The company is expanding its network of data centres and building a new supercomputer. It's investing in the kit that powers the internet and the development of artificial intelligence. Now, we asked ChatGPT what tasks AI can already do better than a human. It said spotting diseases, detecting fraud, translating, transcribing, and navigating traffic. And AI is in its infancy. But the computer chip maker NVIDIA says the UK is perfectly placed to benefit.
The welcoming environment of the UK for startup companies, the welcoming environment to nurture AI companies, I think this is the Goldilocks circumstance you're looking for. I think what's missing is just the infrastructure.
Money's flowing west too. The British pharmaceutical giant GSK plans to invest £22 billion in the United States, 3 times what it's investing in the UK. GSK already has 5 sites in America. Its factory in Upper Merion in Pennsylvania will be expanded. President Trump's urged foreign companies, demanded investment in the United States. He'll be very pleased with this. Nick Clegg tonight isn't. The former Deputy PM, the former President of the Global Affairs at Meta, described the UK-US pact as sloppy seconds from Silicon Valley. He said the deal makes Britain a kind of vassal state, more dependent on American technology. AI has the potential to transform our economy, but in the short term, the Chancellor's still likely to have to make unpopular decisions, I'm afraid, in her budget.
I think the investments announced today could help. They won't be enough on their own to mean that we've suddenly got an economy that's got no more problems left. We need those investments and lots more action by government.
The government didn't get everything it wanted. There's no agreement yet to remove tariffs on US imports of British steel, but neither did Trump. The government's digital services tax, he hates it, a levy on the online sales of US tech companies, it remains in place. Tomorrow, the Prime Minister will give the President his own budget red box, but the budget gift Trump wants is a tax change.
Joel, thank you very much indeed. Well, Robert is in Downing Street this evening and much to talk about. Robert, I guess the key question about this trip is whether it's going to deliver the hard business gains that Keir Starmer wants. But I can't also resist the temptation to ask you about Rupert Murdoch's presence there, sitting next to Morgan McSweeney. That just seems pretty surprising, I think, for a lot of people.
Well, it's very striking. It just goes to show that Keir Starmer and his main advisor, Morgan McSweeney, still feel they need the support of British newspapers, despite their declining sales and some would say declining influence relative to social media. And of course, Murdoch famously, built up, owns Times and The Sun. I have to say, it is slightly odd, however, in sort of public relations terms, given the visit, this is all about President Trump, because President Trump, as Chris Shipp sort of mentioned, is suing Murdoch's Wall Street Journal for $20 billion. Rupert Murdoch is not his favourite person because the Wall Street Journal published an extract from the 2003, the notorious 2003 Epstein birthday book, which was, allegedly a drawing by Donald Trump of a naked girl. Donald Trump absolutely denies this was him, and he essentially says he's been traduced by the Wall Street Journal. So if this visit is all about, essentially making the relationship with Trump better, that proximity of McSweeney to Murdoch won't do it. We have had, as Joel says, eye-watering investments in both directions, America to Britain and Britain to America. Tomorrow, I think it could be quite a tense. I'm going to Chequers. There'll be a press conference with Trump. I think it could be quite a tense day because on other issues, like attitudes to Israel, like attitudes to Ukraine and Putin, we are quite a long way apart. So all sort of smiles tonight, but I think tomorrow could be slightly more tricky for the Prime Minister.
OK, Robert, thank you very much indeed. To be continued tomorrow. The walls of Windsor Castle and specially erected fencing kept protesters well away from the president. Instead, some formed up in central London. Their banners weren't so much star-spangled as slogan-heavy, highlighting a range of grievances directed at Mr. Trump: Gaza, climate change, abortion.
Stop the hate! Stop the fear! Donald Trump's not welcome here! The message from the thousands of protesters in central London today was clear. Donald Trump is not welcome. Demonstrators expressed frustration with the American president's approach to a wide range of political issues.
President Trump is the one individual probably in the entire world who now has the power in his own hands to bring a stop to this terrible, terrible thing that is happening to the people of Gaza and the West Bank. He merely needs to pick up the phone to Netanyahu now and say, it's done, it's over, stop now.
Donald Trump is a climate change denier, and the biggest single threat to life on Earth is climate change.
We're objecting to the idea of Trump being here and what he represents. He wants to divide and not reunite what really is most common with us.
Those loyal to the Prime Minister would say his management of the relationship with the US is a major win. But in the eyes of these demonstrators, Donald Trump is an authoritarian leader who the UK should not so lavishly entertain.
The march, monitored by 1,600 police officers, culminated in a rally at Parliament Square, hosted by comedian Nish Kumar.
I think it's a reflection of the diversity of people that Donald Trump has upset. I'm not sure he would particularly relish being associated with the word diversity. There is a real breadth of people that are here to register their displeasure at Trump's rhetoric and his policies.
The real Donald Trump has been kept far away from the public and won't have seen this protest in person. Even fans gathered in Windsor had to settle for a sighting of his helicopter.
So worth it. Honestly, there's been so many lovely people come here to come and support Trump, but we know what a massive, massive ally Trump is for the UK.
At the end of the day, you have like-minded individuals, I hope, who just want to see a better place. And if he's the man that can deliver it, I'm here 100%.
But not all at the castle see him in such a favourable light. 4 men have been arrested after images of Donald Trump with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein were projected onto the walls last night. He is loved and loathed on both sides of the Atlantic.
Stop the hate! Stop the fear!
Wherever he goes, it's rarely quietly. Carrie Davis, News at 10.
Now, as we've variously referenced in the programme already, there will be a lot of very serious issues to talk about tomorrow, and our international editor, Emma, is here to talk about those. You know, we've discussed already, there's Gaza, the Ukraine, there are a lot of issues on which the British government wants the American government to move quite a bit. Where do you think we really are? How far apart are they?
Well, I think we are significantly far apart on an awful lot of the issues. In terms of tomorrow, I think Keir Starmer will feel he's on slightly safer ground when it comes to discussing Ukraine and trying to urge President Trump to be a more consistent supporter of Ukraine in terms of the weaponry and also potentially security guarantees should there be some kind of peacekeeping force put into Ukraine if that much talked about ceasefire ever actually happens. I think the really challenging point, though, will be Gaza, because they are poles apart on that. You know, there is no distance between America and Israel. They're incredibly close on this. That is not the position of the British government. And we understand that as soon as Donald Trump leaves the UK, Keir Starmer will stand by his commitment to recognise a Palestinian state. He's choosing not to do that before the press conference tomorrow, because I think he believes that that will make for incredibly uncomfortable times. I think it's unlikely that that won't be raised. That is something that, without question, President Trump will condemn. It will be interesting to see just how front foot the British government are willing to be on this, because I think they have a very fine line to walk here between being seen to try and do the best for the national interest and actually just sell other countries and other situations down the river, attempting to kowtow to the Americans.
The banquet is wrapping up and the Trumps will be heading off to bed. Like everything about today, a lot of thought and planning has gone into the guest list, hence a night of business and politics with a sprinkling of celebrity. And if you thought 160 place settings were a lot, you're right, it's taken days to lay the table.
As dinner parties go, they don't come any fancier. Dress code, white tie or tiara, if you have one. A gathering of the great, the good and the government around a table that took 3 days to set. The hosts put out a video to show they'd approved every detail. Place settings precisely 18 inches apart. Precious plates and silverware even if their guests' tastes verge reportedly towards McDonald's. But this was the opposite of fast food, a slow procession and a famously teetotal Trump, who would have avoided the cocktail created to celebrate the occasion, a transatlantic whiskey sour, a British twist on an American classic that included marmalade, pecan foam, biscuit, topped with toasted marshmallow. The menu, traditionally written in French, looks grand but translates to upmarket versions of savoury panna cotta, Norfolk chicken wrapped in courgettes, and ice cream, a presidential favourite.
It's a great honour to be with you.
All this amid the splendour of Windsor's St George's Hall. The planning paid off. Not a single breach of protocol, nor any diplomatic indigestion to worry about. John Ray, News at 10.